When people think of the Mafia, they think of Gambino, Genovese, and Lucchese, the legendary Italian crime families. Movies turn names like Al Capone and John Gotti into icons, but what they don't tell you is that Black Mafia bosses have been just as ruthless, just as powerful, and just as untouchable. From a man who turned a Chicago gang into a multi-state empire, to another who built a drug network trusted by the Sinaloa Cartel, their influence never faded. If the streets have kings, these men still wear the crown. Some men lead through fear, others through respect. Eugene Big U Henley learned to do both. He built his name in the streets of Los Angeles, rising through the rolling 60s Crips, one of the most feared gangs in America. Even though he rebranded himself as a community leader and industry mentor, those who understood the game knew better. With power meant controlling more than just street soldiers, Henley had mastered it. He built ties with rappers, athletes, and businessmen, turning their influence into leverage. Supposedly, he left the life behind, but as long as the rolling 60s still moved weight, his word still carries weight. The laws tried to catch up. His name has surfaced in murder cases, fraud investigations, and even RICO indictments. In case anyone forgot, he was accused of orchestrating the killing of rapper Rayshawn Williams, a crime tied to a diss track that ended with the victim's body dumped in the Las Vegas desert. Even if he kept his hands clean, FBI reports link him to extortion rings, fraudulent business dealings, and gang control protection rackets. If Los Angeles has an underworld, Big U still has his hands on the pulse. Big U mastered control in Los Angeles, but he was not the only one who turned a street gang into an empire. In Chicago, Larry Hoover built something even larger. But what started as a small crew in Chicago's streets became one of the most structured criminal organizations in US history. He transformed the Gangster Disciples into a nationwide empire, with 30,000 members across 35 states, generating millions through drug trafficking, extortion, and fraud. Even though he spent decades in prison, his name still carries weight. If the government thought locking him up would silence him, they underestimated his reach. He supposedly rebranded the Gangster Disciples as Growth and Development, a movement focused on education and social reform. But as long as the drug money keeps flowing, his old playbook is still being used. Some still see him as a revolutionary, claiming he wanted to move the gang into politics. Others believe it was just another layer of protection, a cover for the same enterprise that has made him one of the most feared men in Chicago. The feds know better. Operation Headache exposed that the Gangster Disciples was still moving over $100 million in drugs per year, proving that Hoover's influence has not faded. Even though he sits in ADX Florence Supermax prison, his network runs like a corporation, with leaders passing down his old laws. In case anyone doubted, the Midwest drug trade still operates under the structure, and street soldiers still swear loyalty to a man they call King Larry. Some men disappear behind prison walls. Hoover never did. Even if he never walks free, his name will never leave the streets. While other Black Mafia heads fight for territory, Cornell CeeLo Johnson operates on a different scale. He doesn't just move products, he moves entire economies. While small-time dealers fight for corners, he's built a multi-state operation that pipelines drugs straight from Mexican cartels into southern cities. However, Johnson doesn't run his empire like a reckless kingpin. He's careful, calculated, and untouchable. His profits flow through trucking companies, nightclubs, and offshore accounts, making it nearly impossible to tie anything directly to him. Every transaction is layered, every route protected, and every loss accounted for before it even happens. The feds have been after him for years, throwing everything at him: wiretaps, stings, undercover agents. Yet every time they think they have him, he's already somewhere else, watching from a distance. They've seized shipments, turned members of his network, and cracked pieces of his operation. But here's the thing about a man like Johnson: he never lets them get close enough to take him down completely. Even though authorities have tried to disrupt his business, new routes keep opening and new distributors keep stepping in. His network is too big to collapse overnight. Moreover, his control doesn't just come from drugs. It comes from knowing exactly who to pay, who to silence, and who to keep in his pocket. Supposedly, the government is closing in, but if history has proven anything, it's that men like Johnson do not fall easily. As long as drugs flood the southern market, his name remains a quiet force behind it. Cornell aside, Let's talk about a Black Mafia head who's built his power without relying on muscle. Tyrell T-Rex Smith didn't need to rule with brute force. His power was money. While other Vice Lords leaders fought for blocks, he built a financial empire that stretched beyond the streets, laundering millions through shell companies, offshore accounts, and real estate. If law enforcement wanted to track his assets, they had to play a game he'd already mastered. Smith's empire was not about brutality, it was about control. If you wanted to move money through his network, you followed his rules. Unless you had something to offer, you were left out. His international connections kept his business running smoothly, shifting money between continents before anyone could trace it. Some say he worked with organised crime syndicates beyond just street gangs, though no one could prove it. The feds dug deep into Vice Lord financial dealings, but Smith was always ahead. In case anyone thought he was just another businessman, they never saw what happened to those who crossed him. He never had to pull the trigger, but the consequences came just the same. As long as millions keep moving through businesses no one can name, he remains untouchable. His rivals understand that better than anyone, especially the ones who are no longer around to talk about it. In Chicago, control is everything, and Darnell Murder Kozar has it. As head of the Black P Stones, he commands an empire built on drug distribution, weapons trafficking, and extortion. Even though the headlines focus on bigger names, the streets know exactly who he is. If you want to move weight in Chicago, you do it on his terms or not at all. His influence stretches far beyond street corners, with deep connections to organised crime networks operating in multiple states. Because of his ability to stay out of the public eye, Kozar has avoided the fate of many other gang leaders. Still, the FBI continues to investigate the Black P Stones, linking them to drug and weapons trafficking operations that span across the Midwest. Unless something drastic changes, law enforcement will struggle to contain an organisation that has thrived for decades. The FBI has tried to shut him down, but in case they forgot, power does not just disappear. Unless federal agents can dismantle the network entirely, Kozar remains one of the last untouchables. His influence runs deeper than any indictment, and people who enforce his will make sure his name never fades. As long as the Black P Stones control the South Side, his grip on the streets holds firm. Supposedly, federal cases have him cornered, but somehow he's still out there, still making moves, still proving some men are never truly caged. Speaking of men who are still out there making moves, have you ever heard of Marcus Slim Porter? While others rely on muscle, he understands the real power comes from controlling money, not just moving it. His reach extends far beyond the streets, flowing through real estate schemes, high-end business deals, and under-the-table financial moves that keep his fortune growing. He's not the kind of man who needs to flash wealth. He owns the places where others come to spend it. His businesses look clean, but beneath the surface, they tell a different story. Properties are flipped, bank loans secured, and entire transactions vanish before anyone can connect the dots. Unless you know where to look, you'd never see the millions being washed through the system. The feds have tried to trace his steps, but Porter doesn't leave footprints. Every business tied to him has a name on paper, a legal team on standby, and layers of protection that keep him 3 steps ahead. People who underestimate him don't make that mistake twice. His money moves in silence, and so do the consequences of crossing him. As long as his network keeps expanding, his grip on the Midwest only tightens. Unless something brings down the entire foundation, he will remain untouchable. But what do you think? Does the Black Mafia command the same level of fear as other crime syndicates?